Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. I am Penny Woolery, and I'm the Manager of Certification and Membership, and I will be one of the hosts for this evening. A few things for you to remember as we go through this next hour is the way that you will ask your questions is to use the Q&A icon. It's at the bottom of your screen, or at least it is on my screen, but you'll know it it'll have two bubbles and a Q&A, and that's where you're going to ask your questions. We have two moderators, Val and Sarah, who will introduce themselves in a moment. But don't confuse the Q&A to the chat box. The chat box just is a single bubble, and that is a way for you to maybe interact and talk to another attendee, or if you have something specific that you need to say to me or Val or Sarah. So use the Q&A to ask your questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Val so that she can introduce herself, and then we'll get to know the rest of our panelists.
Hi, I'm Valerie Smith. I am the Senior Credentialing Analyst for the Certification Department. I basically handle the professional and the expertise level certifications. That means the CFCC applications when they come in, and kind of oversee daily operations for the certification program. I have been with AACE since 2010, and I'm rapidly approaching my official 12th year. I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
I am Sarah Peters. I'm the credentialing analyst here at AACE. I handle mostly the technician level certifications as well as recertification. I have been here less time than Val and Penny, but I've been here going on almost 5 years. And I will turn it over to introduce Jim.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Zach. I'm the chair of the CFCC committee on the certification board. I've been involved in AACE since 1986, so that's 36 years. And I've been certified since July of 2007, which was one of the earliest certifications. So, you know, I've been involved with CFCC for a long, long time. Why don't we go to Nick? Nick, you want to introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, so my name is Nick Flores. I'm a CFCC committee member. I've been on the committee for about 3 years, I think. So I'm one of the, and my certification is relatively new. I guess it was 2018. So I'm one of the later CFC members. But I'm really glad to be here, and hopefully we can help you answer some questions.
Charlie, our certification board chairperson, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you everyone for participating. This is our second Ask Me Anything webinar this year. And so it's good to have you here to talk with us about the CFCC. My background, I've been affiliated with AACE since 1991. I've been twice a chapter or section president, twice a regional director, served in various capacities on the certification board. Am a past president, as is Jim Zach of the association. The objective of the Ask Me Anything webinar series is to provide those people that are interested in AACE certifications an opportunity to meet members of the certification board and the specific committees, and to be able to ask questions and discuss the certification process. And so it's a great opportunity, and I think without any further delay, Penny or Val, will move forward.
Yes, before we get into the questions, we have one question for our attendees. So I'm going to display a poll, and we want you to answer, what is your certification story? Select the single choice that best describes why you attended today's Ask Me Anything. I'm going to close it should just take a few seconds for you to read them over and select your answers. And I am going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Thank you for participating. That gives us a little bit of background of why you attended here today. So now we're going to turn it over to the Q&A. So Val and Sarah, take it away.
We did receive a few questions prior to this webinar. So Sarah and I are going to go ahead and pose those. If you have any questions, or if one of the questions triggers something for you to ask, please be sure to put it in the Q&A section wherever it is on your screen. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question. Is there a sample for the letter of recommendation that is required, or an experience certificate? And to add on to that, what information would you like to see highlighted and included in it? So I was going to just start. I was going to start by saying there's no template.
Yeah. No, Nick and I and other members of the committee do review the applications. I don't think I've ever seen anything standardized. What you want is somebody, a client or a legal firm or somebody that you've worked for, who can offer their opinion on your capability dealing with claims on past issues, past projects, past claims, you know, and objectively. And that kind of the general sense. Nick, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the more you detail, or the more your experience is detailed, the more helpful. The number of years, and specifically what type of work you're doing. A lot of the work that we do, or that you may have done in your past, could be management, project management, but we're really more interested in your claims experience. So if you could really kind of highlight that portion of your work and what you did, and how your involvement with claims and claim issues, as opposed to anything unrelated to that, would be helpful.
When I'm talking to potential CFCC candidates, what I recommend for people to do, if you're not familiar with a letter of recommendation, there are very good resources on the internet. I would just Google samples of reference letters or samples of letters of recommendation. My helpful hint to you, before I pass it over to the CFCC committee for review, the more robust the letter is, the better. The more details, the better, because they really are looking to make sure that you have the depth of experience that you are required to have in order to pass the CFCC, or to qualify and then potentially pass the exam. So definitely the most robust you can make it, the better.
If I can add, Val, also, I think piggyback a little bit on both Jim and Nick's comments. And so if you have a variety of people that can provide a reference for your background, an employer, a client, an attorney for the client, or an outside attorney engaged by your client, so that the folks that are reviewing your eligibility and your references can get a broad perspective of the people that you've interfaced with in your dispute resolution experience.
Yeah, and actually, Charlie, that makes me think of something that's kind of important. One of the parts of this question was an experience certificate, asking what needed to be detailed. So when you're completing your CFCC application, there are different sections. The first section you're going to complete is the years of relevant experience. So this is where you would put in your employment certificate, your verification of employment, that details the length of time you worked for A company, B company, whatever, so that we can see that you've met the 12-year requirement. Specifically in the letters of recommendation, that's where your people are going to expound on that experience, so that the CFCC committee can determine the depth and breadth of your experience from there.
Okay. Want to move on to the next question? Is everybody okay? For the written report requirements and formal claim submittal, some are confidential and private. How do you want this information to be shared? Shall we remove all names of the parties in dispute and then submit it for review?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. The best way to approach that would be to block out or redact anything that would provide information about, the parties or anybody that was involved in the matter. The application is not about who it was, but about the substance of your report that you've prepared and are submitting, so that the committee can gain a good understanding of your style of writing, your style of presentation, your understanding of the various concepts that go into a dispute or claim analysis. And Jim, you might have, or Nick, you might have something you want to throw in on that.
Well, when I filed my report, when I first applied for the certification, I redacted the names of both parties, all lawyers, the name of the project, and the location of the project. So that way the reviewers could look over the delay analysis and the quantum and all that stuff without having any feeling for where this was, who might or might not be involved, and that sort of stuff. And we see reports like that coming through with the applications. That doesn't bother us. We're looking, as Charlie said, the quality of your thinking, the quality of your writing, your presentation, not who the heck you're working for or against.
I can add one more thing. It seems like some of the reports that I've reviewed, sometimes it's difficult to ascertain authorship. Sometimes a report will be submitted that is a combined effort, which is very common. But we don't know what part of the effort the applicant has done, what portion of the report he was responsible for or drafted. And so you need to identify that in some manner, unless you can submit a report, of course, that has that you signed, or that is clearly authored by the applicant. So if you submit a combined report that you contributed to, it's very important to distinguish what it was, what portions that you contributed.
We've also received reports in that don't have the candidate's name on it to identify them as the author. So usually I eyeball them when they come in and see if I can determine if there's a name on there. If not, what I'll do is I'll send an affidavit that has to be completed by whoever would be in the know about your contribution in that report. And then you'll have to submit that back to me so I can send it off with the application.
I see we've been joined by Glenn Palmer, another member of the CFCC committee. Glenn, welcome.
Got to unmute before I can say hello. How is everybody doing?
We're doing well. We're into the questions and answers.
Sorry I'm late. I had another phone call that ran a few minutes long.
No problem.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question then. This is also related to the written report or the formal claim submittal. Do you require claims that went to arbitration, adjudication, or DAB? Sorry, I don't know what that is. Or could a claim be approved by the client but not go to dispute?
I think I understand that. I don't know. Let me take a shot at it. So the DAB is a dispute adjudication board, or sometimes they're called a DRB, a dispute review board. So what, the primary thing, and again, I don't want to, say it's the absolute answer all the time, but the substance of the report. And so oftentimes the disputes are resolved, they're settled before they get to the point of, being something that's in arbitration or something that's in a court, or one of the other types of forum. But if you have a report that you've prepared and that can be substantiated through your references or by someone that you worked for, at least in my experience, and again Jim and others can jump in on this, I don't think there's a pass or fail the eligibility requirements if it settled before it went to litigation. We're looking for the substance of the report. I think does that capture some of it anyway, Jim?
Yeah, I think so. Recognizing that, in my experience anyway, 9 out of 10 claims get resolved before you ever see the first day of arbitration or litigation. So if we held you only to that standard, there'd be very few reports that could be submitted. But it's got to be a formal claim, sort of thing. If it's persuasive enough that people negotiate the settlement, that's great. If they don't, they go to DRBs, DABs, mediation, whatever. It would be the same report. So you'd give the claim itself would give us an ability to judge your knowledge of the claims business and your ability to prepare a claim or present it, and that sort of stuff. And so it doesn't have to be actually submitted as evidence in court or anything.
Not only that, but if I had to testify every time I submitted an expert report, I'd have found another line of work by now.
Very true.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Can I submit both an expert report hiding the private details and a claim submission?
Yeah, there's no rule against that. So yes, you could submit both.
And you can upload them to the application, so that's fine. And the next question actually is kind of similar. Can I submit more than one claim submission? For example, I've used different methods in these claims for delay analysis.
Again, I don't think we would have any problem with that at all.
Well, and not only that, Jim, but some projects don't lend themselves to doing the favorite approach, if you will.
Yeah.
Sometimes because of what we have to work with, we have to do the delay analysis in a different manner.
Yeah, I think the question kind of revolves around, the question is proposed, is the intent to show the breadth of knowledge of the expertise. And I think if you need to submit more than one report, then I think that would be fine. I think it'd be helpful, not necessary. If you have a report, it'd be nice to be able to say, I've got this report and it covers all, everything, all types of analyses, all types of components of claims. That would be nice, but in reality, generally, it's one or two issues that we're dealing with. So if you need to submit more to feel better about showing the breadth of your expertise, then I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Can I also submit a PowerPoint for review of a claim submitted by a contractor while I was working as an engineer and showing entitlement?
Can I ask a follow-up question about the question? Is that in lieu of the claim itself, or is that also?
It says, can I also submit?
Also. Yeah, I don't think we're not. We're really there to analyze the claim itself, and not we don't really need to be briefed on the claim and if the claim is valid or not valid or hitting the wave tops. That's really not what we're looking at. Jim, I would say it would be not necessary to do that. if the claim itself, the claim should speak for itself.
I agree.
I think that these questions seem like the person might be not sure if they have, if they're going to submit what's going to be approved in advance. So they want to get in as much information as they can in order to more or less assure their approval. But here's the thing about the application. So anybody who submits a CFCC application, once I send it to the CFCC committee for review, when it comes back and there's something that needs clarification or additional information or maybe another report, every candidate has a chance to submit that additional information. So if there is something that's missing, or if you've forgotten something, or there's a time period that's missing and they're looking for that for the approval, you will have 30 days to submit that information, and I'll send it back to the CFCC committee for re-review. So you're not going to get denied right off the spot. So that hopefully will calm some people's nerves about applying for the CFCC. Okay, I'm going to ask the next question. What is the advantage of holding the CFCC certification?
The intended advantage is for a claims person who's not yet come up to the expert level, never been hired to testify, is what I would call a backroom person, somebody who's been working on claims for a long time, helping a testifying expert. The idea is to demonstrate to legal counsel or to an owner or a contractor that you're actually ready to take that step. You've got this expert level certification, and get them to at least invite you to the table to interview. Now, you may get there and they ask you, well, have you ever worked on a nuke power facility before? And your answer is no. And they're going to say, thanks for dropping by, because you still, even if you got the level of expertise, an attorney or a client's going to want to see that you have expertise in this type of construction. But if you've never been put forth as an expert, you've never been interviewed, you'll never, attorneys don't go fishing inside a firm. They don't go to Charlie's firm and say, hey, let me talk to these 6 guys who've never testified before, to see if they're ready. Yeah. So the idea is to demonstrate that you have the qualifications to step up. Now, is the experience, your experience matching what their particular case is? And that's that to me is the advantage of it.
Yeah, I think I do think that the value, it cannot be overstated. It's just a very a very good credential to have. I think that it's similar to having PE for an engineer that's has a degree. That gives you a certain level of expertise in your field, and the CFC in particular is a very, very small field. There's probably about 70 people or so, Jim, I'm not sure how many, that have the CFC certification worldwide. So it's very, very, it's rare, and it's I think it's a highly sought after credential, kind of difficult to get, because you have to have a level of experience just to sit for the exam. I think the exam is a good test of your expertise. I think if you're qualified, as a CFC expert, you won't have any difficulty with the test. But that just means you're very well qualified individual. And I think for me personally, I probably didn't need the CFC. It came very late in my career, but for me, it did just gave me a very good level of just a credential that I really sought after.
Looks like Nick froze up.
It happens a lot.
Yeah. So if I can tag onto that, one of the things, if you're going to testify as an expert, you have to qualify each time that you're proffered to be an expert. So it's not automatic. And so the judge or the arbitration panel or the tribunal that sits on the adjudication board will make a determination as to whether you can testify as an expert. And so, another of the benefits or advantages perhaps of having the CFCC is demonstrating to the trier of fact or the people that are going to render the decision that you have this certification at a professional level or expert level by an independent body supporting your qualifications to be considered and qualified to provide expert testimony.
Okay. Next one, are the multiple choice questions equally balanced across the 5 domains listed on the website for CFCC?
Well, the multiple choice questions would cover all 5 areas, but no, they are not equally balanced. There's a percentage of the questions for scheduling. There's a percentage for ethics. There's a percentage for damages that has been agreed upon by the association. So if you're thinking there's 100 questions, 5 things are going to be 20 questions on each of those topics. No, you're not going to see that. They're weighted differently, but all 5 domains will be included in every certification, CFCC certification exam.
Next question. Are examples available of the questions across the 5 domains?
No. A lot of certifications around the world, in my experience, publish a list of sample questions, and they're generally taken from past exams. But those are not expertise level certifications. So one of the decisions the association made when we first started this thing, and I believe it's, Penny, you can correct me, but I believe it's true in some of the other certification exams also, is no, we don't provide any sample questions. If you're standing up for as to be an expert or achieve an expert certification, you shouldn't need that sort of prep.
Can I chime in on what Jim said? I think the experience is really the key. If you have the experience and the breadth of experience to sit for the exam, you should pass the exam. If you just squeaked in and don't have a lot of breadth of experience, you probably have difficulty. But if you have the experience, that's your best. That's your best training in order to prepare you for this exam.
Okay, probably similar responses to the next question, but are examples of essay scenario types available?
And the answer is no. Same reason. The idea is we're saying is if you're qualified to be an expert, you don't need this sort of prep. Your experience will have taught you this over the 12 or more years of experience in the claims business. So we don't put out any sample tests, any questions, any essay scenarios to help you prep.
Okay, the next question. What type of industry professions are required to verify experience?
Industry profession.
Well, I
If
think,
you have,
go ahead, Nick.
if you have a recommendation from lawyers, I think that's probably one of the bigger, your people that you would be working with, or you may be a lawyer yourself. those types of references, obviously, those people are working in claims and litigation. So their recommendations and references are probably those that you would naturally utilize. But if you have if you're working for a company that has a disputes division, arbitration, mediation type references, those will be very, very helpful. Or if you have your own consulting firm, that may also be well, where you can get your customers to opine on your on the work that they did for that you did for them.
Yeah, the client, the last part, what Nick was saying, if you had a client, whether it's an owner or a contractor, that you helped, assisted through the claims process, that would be persuasive. And one of the unusual ones that I saw when I first got on this committee years ago was from an arbitrator. And this particular arbitrator had sat across from this fellow who was seeking the certification twice. And he wrote a recommendation talking about how persuasive the report was and the testimony was. And, oh, gee, that's a good one. if you happen to have a situation like that, use that, because I found that really persuasive when I was looking at that application.
Okay, similar to the last question, can they all be lawyers that have experience with the candidate? I think you guys already answered that, but
Certainly, they could all be lawyers that you've worked for or with on claims. Absolutely. They could also be in-house lawyers. If you're working for a major construction firm, for example, you're in their claims group, and the claims groups are normally working in the company's legal group. Those folks could write those for you also.
Okay, the next question. Can the four-year college degree be non-engineering, legal, or architectural based?
Yeah. Construction management degree, accounting degree. Trying to think of some of the others. I mean, particularly on scheduling, there is no degree in the United States or Canada that's offered for construction scheduling. And so many of the expert schedulers that I've met in my career had a different background. They just happened to get into construction. They got assigned to scheduling and fell in love with it and spent years doing it, and then became expert claims guys with respect to scheduling. So, business management degrees probably would qualify in that area. So you're not locked into just an architectural engineering degree. No.
I think we've even had over the years had some applicants that come out of the the IT community, where there are people who are involved in scheduling and cost management, and you don't hear a lot about the disputes that come out of that, but they come out of software development or out of hardware development sometimes, and so we've seen applications even with people whose backgrounds are in that IT related arena.
I can assure you, Charlie, doing an IT program, an IT project has claims. I've done two of them.
okay, next question. Is the application information secure from outside requests and demands for production?
Penny, I'm going to defer to you on that. My answer is it should be, but I can't tell you from personal experience.
It is, yeah. I mean,
I don't think we've ever had anybody ask that question.
Right. I mean, it's a fair question. I mean, you're submitting a lot of documentation. Even if you're redacting, you want to be sure that it's not something that is just floating around there for anyone to get. But no, it is secure.
Secure, yes.
Okay, and one of my favorite questions. How should the experience section be submitted? Is a CV sufficient? I'm going to go ahead and take this one. So the experience section is a little different from the letters of recommendation, as I previously discussed. But the experience verification has to be done by your employer. It needs to be a statement of duties, your dates of experience, your title, so we can get an idea of the duration of time you were with an organization or several organizations. And also what you did to make sure that it is pertinent to what you're applying for. So a CV is, or a resume or an offer letter. None of those things would qualify as verification. Obviously, CVs and resumes, you can make up stuff and put on there. So it's not really verifying anything. Offer letters, it doesn't give us the duration. It may or may not give us the start date. But we don't know if you're still working there or not. So the key information has to be the dates of service, of course, your name, your title, and a description of your duties. And that's, oh, go
Can I
ahead.
add a follow-up, please? So we have seen some applications over time where an applicant worked for a company that was part of a merger or acquisition circumstance. And so they don't have anybody from the previous company, but your current employer through the background check process would have verified or validated your previous employment. And so we have seen certain, excuse me, circumstances where, you know, that's been applied to validate or verify someone's, not only their employment, but their experience.
Those are all the pre-questions we had.
So can you talk a little bit about, we just announced recently a change to the CFCC exam for taking the exam and passing the multiple choice questions, but not the essays. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I don't care who takes it. I mean, I could talk about it too, but I just think it's a good opportunity to highlight that.
One of the issues that we have faced over the last few years is that applicants failed the exam. They passed the multiple choice, they didn't pass the essays. And typically the standard practice has been up until January of this year, I believe it was, that you had to sit for the whole exam again. And so the certification board considered that and thought, well, it's kind of a waste of time. If you've already passed the multiple choice question, why should you have to retake that? So you now, the situation is, you only have to, if you pass the multiple choice, fail the essays, you only have to retake the essays. However, I can assure you, you will not get the same essays back again. So, and I think you can do that, Penny, as 3 times within a year.
It's within 6 months. So the registration period is 6 months. So once you're cleared to take the exam, you take it. Let's say you pass the multiple choice and you want to retest. When you retest, you'll be able to take it just for the essays, but you'll have 2 more opportunities to do that, providing it is before the 6-month period ends. So whichever comes first. If you do not pass the essays for your second time reset or your third, and you have to take it again, then you start all over. So you would have to start a whole new application, pay the full fees, take the full exam. If you pass the multiple choice that time, we're hoping that you never have to do that. But in the event that you do, then you can start the next iteration of just taking the essays. So that's the cycle that it takes, but it is a 6-month registration period.
One of the questions that I've been asked, if you don't pass the essay portion of the exam, what do I learn from that? And the deal is that there are there are 4 graders on each CFCC essay, and you're not going to get a numerical grade. You're not going to say, hey, this is 50, that's 60, whatever. What you will, however, get is a summation of the comments that the graders make on each essay, which would give you some guidance in that area. And those are submitted to the staff, and the staff will provide you those comments. So you can look those over, and you'll have to remember what you wrote, of course. But you can look those over, and so that would take it, I guess you'd call it like lessons learned sort of review, but it's not going to be a score. You know, you got 42 points on this exam or on this essay, but you will get that. And actually, I believe, and Valerie has chewed me out a couple of times when I provided the summary of the 4 scores on the essays, and I said pass, and she said, well, you got to make some comments anyway. So even if you pass the essay, you will get some comments back, because you know, you may have gotten a good score, it's over 70, so that's passing on that essay, but perhaps you didn't address one point that the graders think was still important, even though you pass. So you, even on those essays that you do achieve a passing score, you will receive commentary on that too.
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think what else we got here.
So if somebody passes the exam, how long is it good for?
It's good for 3 years.
Yeah, and then you have
I
to
know, 'cause
recertify.
I know, I just had to recertify this week.
That's
said
why I
if
brought it
didn't-
up. Yeah, that's why I
Yeah,
brought
they
it
said
up.
if I didn't get recertified by the end of this month, I'd lose the certification. I'd have to sit for the exam again. I don't want to do that.
It is definitely an examination that you can retain by, you know, continuing in your field and continuing education, serving on any type of committee or panel. There's just a lot of ways that you can earn CEUs in order to maintain your CFCC certification. That is, it appears to be hard to get. So you don't want to have to take the exam again if at all possible. So that's always a good option.
And the other part of it, at least in the United States, this is not true in other countries, but at least in the United States, most professions require that once you've achieved a certification, that it has to be renewed on some basis. I don't know if they're all 3-year, 4-year, whatever. But the whole idea is that they want to make sure you're continuing to participate in the profession for which you're certified, that you're continuing to keep up with the profession. You know, the things change in these days. And so, you know, to get a certification put in your pocket and then rest on that laurel for 25 years, that's not going to happen in architecture, engineering, legal profession, claims consulting, and a bunch of CPA or something like that, and a bunch of others. So yeah, recertification is I think pretty standardized across most professions these days. 3 years is what AACE decided upon years ago when we offered the very first certification, the certified cost professional. And so all of our certifications, I believe, go on a 3-year cycle, but I know this one does.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to ask, so the CFCC is based on common law.
Yeah.
So if a candidate is not really practicing in common law, but would like to still sit for the CFCC exam to become, you know, certified, what are the chances that they would be able to pass the exam?
My experience, and I've worked in 39 countries outside the US, my experience is that many practitioners who come from civil law countries seek common law degrees. In other words, they'll go to a university in someplace like England or Canada or something like that and get a degree in common law. So many of the people that I've worked with in the Mideast when I was over there had gone back to England for that sort of degree. So even though they are in civil law, they're also schooled in common law. The other part is if you don't have that schooling, there is a large raft of books published in common law countries, UK, Canada, United States, Australia, places like that, that you could buy and study in those. And the CFCC still is an open book exam, although Penny, you can only bring 1 or 2 books in, I believe.
2 books maximum, and it's the candidate's choice.
Right. So, you know, if you find one that you believe is very helpful to you, you can bring that book in. Now, we're not going to give you any extra time on the exam to sit there and look. So, you know, you're pretty well going to have to study the book, but you could bring it in for reference. When we used to actually monitor the exams, when they were all paper and they were, you know, people sat there and they had to have a monitor there. I saw folks looking stuff up in books just to make sure they understood an issue so they could answer the question or the essay. But you could do that. We are debating, well, we're not debating it. We're trying to figure out a way to create a second exam for civil law countries. That is, Charlie, sometime in the future.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Because-
it is. But you know, as a follow-up to Jim's very relevant comments, you know, what the exam is testing are the competencies that you've gained through your education, through your training, through your years of experience. And so the exam tests all of those facets of your experience. And so, you know, just for example, scheduling or cost estimating, those types of things, you know, my experience, you do scheduling regardless of whether you're from a common law country or a civil law country. You do cost estimating and cost management or earned value management, whatever the case may be. So it's really trying to test the breadth of your competencies that you've gained, more so than you know, than the other very pointed aspects, I guess. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think it is. Any other questions?
Well, I know that we've had a couple attendees that have left already, and that's fine. This is being recorded. So I want to share just for a moment, this is being recorded. So for those that might be joining us on the recording, if you have any questions leaving this session today, or those of you that are watching it on the video right now, you can scan this QR code and it'll take you to just a 1-question form that you can ask us any question. If you're sitting at a desktop, you can just go to our website in the search bar, just type in the letters AMA and the form will come up and you can ask any question that you might have after listening to this session. You're thinking about it and you might have some more questions. Just shoot us a question and we'll get, if we can't answer them at headquarters, we'll send them to the panelists to get a comprehensive answer to you. So that if you're still considering whether or not CFCC certification is for you, we want to give you as much information to help you make that final decision. So I'll leave this up on the screen for just a moment before we end. It looks like we might be ending before the hour. I'm going to leave that up on the screen and then I'll let you guys continue to maybe talk about some things that you've personally been asked, or maybe just some advice in our closing comments to anyone that's considering maybe wanting to be one of you that are on this panel. What were the steps that you took? I guess I'll ask the question. What were the steps that you took early in your career that led you on this path to you are now not only a sought after expert witness, but also being a subject matter expert?
That's a very good question, Penny. I think for me, it was pretty interesting. I think it happened more that I just had an affinity towards the legal side of things. And in evaluating contracts, I started off my career as a contracting officer for the Navy. And then I would actually be the recipient of all these claims and evaluating those claims. And then when I got into private practice, I started, having a lot of just an affinity towards dispute resolution and solving these problems and looking at the legal aspects. And that's kind of how I got involved in it. And it's just something that I had a particular knack for, and moved more and more towards that, and ended up because I had an expertise in that level. Every company I worked for always fed me those types of issues, the problem issues, the disputes, the claims, and that's kind of how I ended up where I am in Japan.
Nice. Oh, in Japan now. How about you, Jim?
Well, like Nick, I started off as a contracting officer, but I was working for the state of South Carolina, where we were one of the last sovereign immunity states. That is, you couldn't sue an agency of the state of South Carolina or any government agency in the state without specific prior approval from the legislature, until the EPA started their construction grants program and said, oh, to get the grant, you have to use these contract clauses. And suddenly the entire earth shook in that state. And so as a contracting officer, I'm starting to receive change order requests and claims and, differing psychic stuff that none of us had ever heard of. So since I was the head of that group, they said, well, you better learn. So I did, and like Nick, I found it fascinating. Now, Glenn, on the other hand, you came from an entirely different perspective, right?
I did. I actually started out as a construction scheduler, actually a construction planner. Back then, we separated planning and scheduling, and that was on a nuclear power job that I spent 9 years on. Then I went into the home office. I went to Italy for a couple of years doing construction scheduling, and eventually became the head of scheduling for Stone and Webster. And that's actually where I met Jim the first time. And then Stone and Webster decided to move out of downtown Boston, and that was going to be a huge commute problem for me. And so I went to work for a consulting company that Jim knew very well. And actually, they were building a lot of combined cycle power plants in those days. And this consulting company had a lot of disputes on combined cycle power plants. So it worked out very well for me. And that's kind of how I got started in the consulting business.
And Charlie, you had a different background also, didn't you?
Yeah, I grew up in the construction business. My family was in the construction business. And then once I graduated from engineering school, I actually went to work, not in the family business, but went to work for a construction management consultant. And the first project I was assigned to was a re-procurement project where the original contractor was terminated for default, and then they hired another contractor to finish the job. And so my first experience in testimony was not as an expert, but as a fact witness testifying about all the things that it took to reconcile what the original contractor left behind and what the replacement contractor had to do. And of course, you know, in my history of working on disputes, that one took over 10 years to finally get to its ultimate resolution. But that's what got me started. And then I went to work for a heavy construction contractor for a number of years, and still continued to be involved with change orders and disputed issues. And then I got hired by a construction consultant, and it just continued to go from there. So.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know why we didn't ask that earlier, but I'm glad that we took some time to learn that. I think it's beneficial for candidates out there who maybe don't have the 12 years of experience yet, but yet they can capture a vision based on where you all started, and they can work towards that for their career path. So I know that we're just about 4 minutes from 7 o'clock, but we have answered most of the questions. I think this is a great place for us to close the session. And thank you all for attending. Thank our attendees for spending an hour with us and learning more about CFCC. But please know, it doesn't end here. You can reach out to us anytime. Just give us a call or send us an email. And if we don't know the answers, we'll make sure that someone gets the right answer, and we'll get that to you. So again, thank you, panelists, for being here with us, spending your valuable time and your expertise with us. Thank you, Val and Sarah. And we'll just sign off for now, and we'll see you at some point in the future. Bye, everyone.
Come to the conference and expo.
Come to the conference and expo. Yes, that was a good plug for that. So make sure you get registered for that. See y'all later.
Everyone.
Bye.